Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Tuesday, July the 30th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, I think that the big story happening in the world today is the situation in Venezuela, and I've been following. People are posting all the time on Instagram and on Twitter, and they're posting some pretty amazing videos about what's happening there. I mean, there is clearly a confrontation going on there between the Maduro government and the people in the streets. And where will this go? I don't know. But more and more governments in Latin America are basically saying, no, we don't accept, uh, you know, your, we don't accept what you did, basically stealing the elections. We don't accept it. And they're not recognizing the Maduro government as the real government of Venezuela. Where all this goes, it's fascinating, but it could also be deadly for people because we understand that, and I saw this a few minutes ago, that tonight they're going to be basically shutting down the internet and turning out the lights so that people cannot have an opportunity to put out, stuff out, in the internet like they've been doing for the last couple of days. They're also threatening to arrest the president-elect and the opposition leader. So, I mean, this could get really ugly. This could get really ugly. And what happens, I don't know. They're telling people, you cannot be out in the streets after 6. They're declaring martial law, and they're going to take drastic action against people if they're marching. But from what I see in these videos, what I see are people who are simply not afraid. And, there may be a real bloodbath tonight in Caracas or in Venezuela if this thing continues the way it's going. Now, one good sign is that there are some elements of the military who are walking away and saying, we're not going to shoot our own people yet, but in the States. So I think the world has to do something. I believe that this is an opportunity for the United States to at least get Maduro out of Venezuela, take him somewhere, and just get him out. Just get him out. And, take whoever he wants to bring with him and just get him out. And then have the new president-elect take over. That's the only way this is going to get fixed. If the longer Maduro stays, the more likely there's going to be a bloodbath. And frankly, if you're looking at it from the standpoint of Maduro himself, he could be executed in one of these confrontations. So nothing good's going to happen as long as Maduro stays in Venezuela. And a lot of good things can happen if somehow we, the United States, can offer to take him out and take him to Cuba or take him wherever we want to take him. But again, I'm just watching the videos like everybody else. And it's a very bad situation in Venezuela. I have not seen crowds in the streets like that. I think you have to go back, remember back in 2009 when there was an uprising in Iran. And unfortunately, that time the Obama administration did not support the people in the streets, and they just basically gave the government an excuse to put it down. I don't know what the position of the Biden administration is yet because he really hasn't said anything. The vice president has put a tweet out saying that, we have to respect the elections. President Trump did come out and criticized the Maduro government quite strongly, but we have got to be there ready to help. And we've got to be, and the best way we can help right now is see if somehow we can get him out of the country, cut a deal with him of some type so that he can get the heck out. Because as long as he's in there, it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. That much I can tell you. Well, anyway, we'll have to keep an eye on it. It's an ongoing story. There's really no. I think the next 24, 48 hours are critical for Venezuela. There's either going to be a huge bloodbath, or Maduro is going to get overthrown. That's what I see happening one way or the other. Well, let's talk a little bit about a story that has been in the news here. And I've got a post about this coming out on Wednesday. And that is the story from Seymour Hersh, who is an investigative reporter. He's been around for a long time. I remember him Heck, he goes back to the 70s. He may even go back to Vietnam. I'm not exactly sure about that. But he was the one who wrote that book about Henry Kissinger and the situation in Chile, the military coup of Pinochet back in the 70s. I mean, he was way all over that. And he wrote a book about that. He also wrote some books about other situations. But he's one of these guys who he's not your typical journalist, because he follows stories, and sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong, but at least he's got the guts to write it, which is, he's not politically correct, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, the latest story that he has out there is that President Obama went to President Biden and basically said, if you don't get out, we're going to use the 25th on you. We're going to apply the 25th Amendment to you. And the vice president is on board. So just think about that for a second. The 25th Amendment was created for the purpose of guaranteeing that the president of the United States, or that the presidency could function in the event that the president was disabled, like, for example, an accident or a stroke or some kind of a disability, or as happened during I think the first or second Bush administration, the president had an operation. I think it also happened with Reagan. He had an operation, and for like a day or two, he was out of it. So, there was an acting president during that time. That's the whole point of the 25th Amendment, is to protect the presidency and the country and national security in the event that the president is disabled, incapacitated, whatever it may be. What happens is then that the vice president puts the cabinet together and says, hey, we got a problem. Here's a man who can no longer function as president. And then they have to take the next step. The next step could be making the president or the vice president the permanent president, or making the vice president an acting president if there's some hope of recovery for the president. That is the whole point of the 25th Amendment. It's a very good idea. It's never been used, but it's never been used completely. There have been, as I said, with Reagan and Bush, it was used for a day or two just to guarantee continuity. But it's never been used this way, where you go to a president and you say, you're unpopular, you cannot win the election, the Democrats think you're going to bring us down, so you need to sign this paper saying you're not running for re-election. And if you don't, we're going to throw the 25th on you, or 25th at you. That, if that's true, that's a scandal. That's a scandal. That was never, absolutely never, the intent of the 25th Amendment. And again, this is a story from Seymour Hersh. To my knowledge, it has not been confirmed. And you would think that by now there'd be more curiosity on the part of the press. I would have thought so. But anyway, this is a major story. And if it's true, we've got a major scandal in our hands, because what we have done is that we've overthrown the presidents. I mean, we basically have stepped in, we've canceled the primaries, and we have, single-handedly pointed at someone and says, you're going to be the next president. You're going to be the nominee of the Democrat Party. Completely overlooking the fact that you had primaries and you had, I don't know how many thousands, maybe millions of Democrats who voted in the primary. This has to be investigated. This has to be looked at. It's got to be one of the questions that Kamala Harris gets, either during the debates or before that. Now, Kamala Harris right now is going through a little bit of a honeymoon period where, the media is madly in love with her, and, they're basically treating her quite gently. And okay, that happens. I'm not, but at some point they got to start asking questions. And this has to be one of the questions. Exactly what was her role in this? Because if she participated in this, that's not what the 25th Amendment is about. In fact, if they didn't think that President Biden was in a position to continue as president, what they should have done is they should have said, you got to resign and then give the presidency to Kamala Harris. That's what they should have done. but not to threaten him with the 25th Amendment and say, if you don't sign this, we're going to get you out through the 25th. That is not what this is all about. So we'll see. We'll see how this pans out. But I smell a scandal here, a big one, and we need to talk about it. There has to be. I mean, the media needs to ask questions about this. Let's hope that they do. Well, let me leave you today with a happy birthday to a fellow named Paul Anka, who was actually born in Canada and had a bunch of hits. But you know, he's one of the few. This is an interesting little detail. He's one of the few artists. I think Elvis is the only exception, the only other one, who's had a number one song or a top song in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. Elvis did it. I don't think too many other groups have done it or artists. I know the Bee Gees did it in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They had top 10 hits or number one hits. But there aren't too many people who can do that over 3 decades. I mean, it requires a tremendous consistency, I guess, in your productive work and your creative work. But Paul Anka, who was born in Canada, he's 83 today. He did it. And, you know, one of his great songs was Put Your Head on My Shoulder. But one song that he wrote that very few people know this, it's that very popular song that Frank Sinatra sang, My Way. He was the one that composed that song. And that ended up being, I think, his biggest or most popular composition, even though I don't think he personally recorded that. But it ended up being his, I think, his most successful composition. It's been done by a ton of people. He also had other hits like Diana, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, Having My Baby, Good Night, My Love, a bunch of others that he recorded on his own at different times in a pretty amazing career. So happy number 83 to Paul Anka, born in Canada. A lot of people don't know that, but he was born in Ottawa, Canada, and became very big in the late 50s. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.